We are on the 9th session of our Attitudes of Beings based upon the Sermon on the Mount, using the Beattitudes as an index or a table of contents, if you will, for the sermon. And we started off by talking about the nature of being. On being was the first topic, the first week that we worked on this. And then we moved on to the first Beatitude, which was, get my outline here. Blessed are the poor in spirit. And we talked about how the poor in spirit are poor in spiritual pride, or humble, if you will. Blessed are the poor in the spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So then we realize that presence of God when we put God first, when we're humble. And then we go on to blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And that's part of letting go of the ego, letting go of our having to be in charge and control, and letting God be in control, but God being in charge. That's, being pure in spirit is to be humble. And once we learn to be humble, we sometimes face into how we are attempting to control life. And so we mourn with the passing of our control, the passing of our being in charge. And then comes, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And the meek are similar to the poor in spirit. The meek is our relationship, in our sense, in relationship to God, being humble before God. So it's a little deeper level. The poor in spirit, humble, that we were talking about, the nature of the people, the Jewish people at that time thought that they were the chosen people, that they were. So the poor in spirit has to do more with how we relate to others, and the meekness has more to do with how we relate with God. Again, non-resistance, being non-resistant to our good, receptive to our good. And then we talked about being positive. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be fulfilled. Let me read it from here. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst, for they shall be satisfied. There you go. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. To hunger and thirst, it's an affirmation. We start working with affirming good. And within the affirmations, within that hunger and thirsting, of course, the rest of the Sermon on the Mount that goes along with it includes the Lord's Prayer. And so we had a little side trip on talking about the Lord's Prayer as an affirmative diagram for prayer. The prayer is not about, that positive prayer, that effective prayer is not about making things happen or changing God's mind, but it's about changing us. The prayer changes us and how we look at God and look at our relationship to the world. It's an affirmative, or in Emmett Fox's words, invocatory. I think I said that right. They're invoking that awareness of the presence of God. And this is a pattern for prayer, that Jesus didn't say pray this prayer, he said pray like this. And so he gave us a pattern for positive prayer that basically starts with our relationship with the nature of God, the divinity, our relationship to God, our affirmation that we receive all that we need, which daily bread and forgiveness, forgiving our trespasses, and then an affirmation, affirmative statement, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. A closing, if you will. And then we come to the fifth Beatitude, which is blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. And this is the only Beatitude for which the quality given is the quality received. So being merciful and receiving mercy. And it's a statement of the law. Emmett Fox says it's a statement of the law of life, and Eric Butterworth calls it the law of consciousness. And in many ways it's called the law of mind and action. It's called the law of reciprocity, the law of retribution. And in the rest of the sermon it talks about an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. You've heard it said, eye for an eye, for a tooth. But I say unto you, go the extra mile. If somebody asks for your coat, give them your cloak as well. etc., etc., etc. So mercy is lifting up to a higher level. So if we give mercy, we receive mercy. So the more that we lift ourselves up, the more that we are lifted up. The more that we lift up others, I should say, the more we are lifted up. So as we give mercy, as we assist others to lift up, then we receive that lifting as well. And now this lesson is blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So in our materials today, from the Sermon on the Mount by Emmett Fox, he talks about to see. So he's taking the blessed part first, what the blessing is, and then going back to the quality that brings that blessing. So he talks about to see. He says, let us consider the promise is nothing less than to see God. If one could see God, he would have to be, with our eyes, he would have to be limited, and therefore not God. To see, in the sense referred to here, signifies spiritual perception. And spiritual perception means just that capacity to apprehend the true nature of being, which we so sadly lack. So we got to get out of the Missouri state of mind, right? The show me state, it's on the license plates, or at least it used to be when I lived there, right? It's a show me state. If I can't see it, taste it, touch it, smell it, it doesn't exist. Well, then we miss 98% of existence, or 96, or however much of that goes beyond that which we can't taste, touch, sense, or smell. We already know that there are sounds we can't hear, that there are colors of the rainbow that we aren't, that we are unable to see, light waves that we can detect with machines, gamma rays, beta rays, X-rays, all these different expressions of life that we aren't able to see, taste, touch, smell through our senses. And so to limit ourselves to say, well, to see God means to see God with our eyes, with our physical eyes. No, it's with our inner eyes. Blessed are those who are pure in heart, for they shall see God. To see means, in this sense, like he says, to see is to use spiritual perception. It's a spiritual perception, to see the truth behind the appearances. And he goes into talking about heaven being the religious name for the presence of God, that it's infinite, it's eternal, and it's within us. It's the realm of spirit, of substance. Goes on to say, to see God is to apprehend truth as it really is. And this is infinite freedom and perfect bliss. To see God is to apprehend truth as it really is. Because really, in unity, of course, we say there's only one presence and one power, that's God. And to see God, then we are seeing God in all. That God is in all, working in and through and as all. That there is nothing but God. And so when we are in a consciousness of separation from God, in lack and limitation and dis-ease and conflict and all those things that we partake of, then we are missing the boat. We're not seeing God. As one of my teachers, Yogi Bhajan, Yogi Bhajan, the founder of the Golden Temple and of White Tantric Yoga, used to say is that if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. And I keep bringing that to mind, right? When I'm seeing something that doesn't seem like it's of God, so God's only good, God's only love. If I'm seeing something that's not good, that I'm judging as not good, as I'm just judging as being not love or loving, then I am not seeing God. I'm not pure in heart. Goes on to say that purity is recognizing God alone as the only real cause, the only real power in existence. He calls this the master key to life. Nothing less than the secret of escape from all sickness, trouble, limitation, the overcoming or reversing, in short, of the fall of man. And so our text might be paraphrased. Okay, he goes on to paraphrase it. But this is the golden key. Emmett Fox has that pamphlet called The Golden Key, and the essence of the golden key is whatever your problem is, whatever the difficulty, whatever the concerns, whatever the crisis or problem, place our mind on God instead of the problem. Again, to raise ourselves up to a higher level than the level of the problem. As Einstein says, that a problem can't be solved at the level of a problem. We have to raise our consciousness up. And we're continuing to see that. That was what we saw in previous Beattitudes, and that's what comes through very strongly in this one, to raise our eyes up, to see beyond, to see with the heart, to practice the presence of God. That's a phrase he uses, or practice the presence of God. That's one of my favorite phrases I see coming through lots of literature. Now, Eric Butterworth, as I mentioned, he's very practical, and he's got a little different way of looking at things. And one of the things he says is, don't let the apparent block the real. So when we're talking of blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. On the human level, man's contact with the world about him is through the senses, predominantly through sight. On this level, he sees good and he sees evil, and life is a precarious experience, but life is whole even though man sees only part. Don't let the apparent block the real. The appearances of sickness, appearances of disease, appearances of conflict, the appearances of poverty and lack and limitation and all that sort of stuff is all around us, but that's not the reality. There is more than enough good to go around. There's no reason why we have poverty. That's a simple one. There's no reason we have poverty. There's no reason we have people going hungry. There's more than enough food to feed everybody. What we have is a lack of will to distribute it. Right? We can deliver a 500-pound bomb with pinpoint accuracy half a world away. We could deliver 500 pounds of food real easy, and it's a lack of will. And of course, there's all the political conditions and all the different ideas about teaching people to fish versus giving them a fish, that sort of thing. That's great. And if people are hungry, they need to be fed. And then there's also reorganizing our systems so that people don't have to go hungry. People don't have to go without work. So it goes on to say, what the eyes report is determined by what the mind believes. So here we have, right? Blessed are the pure in heart. So Fox is telling us that he's talking about the level of thought, and here Butterworth is telling us it's at the level of mind. Mind includes not only thinking but feeling. So that's at soul conscious level. So when the heart is pure, so when our thoughts and our feelings are aligned with truth, with a capital T truth, the reality of God's presence within all of existence, and good working out through all that is appearing. So the eyes report what the mind believes. So lift up your eyes and get your thoughts centered on the good, the true, and the beautiful, and you will see God. Because God is true, good, and beautiful. Get into a God consciousness. There's a lot of great stuff in here. Practice viewing life from the highest rather than the lowest point of view. That's one of my favorite things. One of the things I tell my wife all the time, right? If you can take what I said two different ways, right? And one way makes you happy and one way makes you mad, please take it the way that makes you happy, okay? Right? Because there's always more than one way to take any message. And I'm so amazed sometimes that when I say something and people come back to me and they've interpreted it in such a way that I had no idea it could be interpreted that way. But because we see things the way we are.
Right. Well, in that statement right there, by what our mind believes.
By what our mind believes, yeah.
So, it can be anything. And you see people get into arguments over, okay, the sky's blue or...
Yeah.
Because their mind perceives something. And everybody's different. Everybody's mind perceives something different.
Exactly. And so being pure in heart, the heart is our soul, the heart is our thinking and feeling, it is a mental level, it is where we come from. So when we are centered in God, in our thoughts and our feelings, then of course all that we see is God, because as within, so without. So when we focus on God, instead of focusing on rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, which most of us are involved in, we're going to change this person, we're going to change this situation, we're going to change this, change that, and then once we've got everything changed, of course, everything will be perfect. Well, no, the Titanic will have been sank by then,
Right.
and you'll have to find a new boat to start rearranging. So it's the insanity of it. We keep doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same results. If we expect different results, then, of course, we have one success somewhere along the line rearranging the deck chairs, right? So we have one success, and then, of course, we spend the rest of our lives rearranging deck chairs and having failure after failure, at least,
Right.
It doesn't turn out the way we want it.
Right.
Anyway, so as we move on and look at verses 27 through 37 of chapter 5, so that was chapter 5, verse 8. And this is interesting because, as I say, the rest of the Sermon on the Mount, chapters 5, 6, and 7, relate to the Beatitudes, but in a reverse. And so we've been working our way back from chapter 7, and now we're in chapter 5, verses 27 through 37. The first, it starts off, it says, "You shall not commit adultery, but I say to you, anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." Right? That was the famous... infamous, I guess, quote of Jimmy Carter, who talked about how he had sinned because he had lusted for another woman in his heart. He'd never committed adultery. He hadn't actually gone out and acted on it. And there'd be very few of us, and I know for myself, there's times when I have seen a lovely young thing and had impure thoughts, right? But I don't hang on to them. See, that's the key. It's not necessarily whether those thoughts cross our mind, but whether we entertain them or not. See, I love that phrase, to entertain them, right? We bring them in, we give them a soda or a drink of some kind, and we feed them and hang out with them for hours at a time. Well, eventually we're going to act on them.
Right. As
within, so without. So when we have those thoughts, right, we can say, "Get behind me, Satan," if that's our thing, or we can just say, "No, I'm clear, love." However, that's my friend Verl Minto, love to do that when we hear something negative come out of our mouth, like "I am sick," and we go, "Clear, healthy." So we say healthy, we say the good twice as many times as we say the bad. Right? We say the positive twice as many times as we say the negative. So if we hear ourselves thinking or speaking negatively or feeling negatively, then we turn it around and reaffirm the positive. And that helps to purify, to cleanse the heart. So we talked about adultery. And then it goes into this great stuff about if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and throw it away. It's better that you lose one of your members than your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better than you lose one of your members than your whole body go to hell. Of course, hell is useless, unnecessary suffering. It's that burning sensation we get when we know that we aren't living up to our potential. The thing, and the idea of plucking an eye. So, we talk about how we have eyes for somebody or something, right? We talk about, there's a saying about, remove your eye from this person, which means don't look at them anymore. Or to cut your hand off, which literally means to stop putting your hands on something. Or to stop stealing, right? Because it's, in ancient times, of course, if you got caught stealing, they'd cut a hand off.
Right.
Right? I don't there's that old saying about an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, which we talked about in the last lesson a little bit, the karma thing. But here, it's basically, again, we're talking about the level of thought. It's better to cut those negative ideas out, than it is to hang on to them. So Emmett, in his Sermon on the Mount, talking about these paragraphs, says, what really matters is thought. Any outward act is but the sequel to a thought, and that type of thought which we allow to become habitual will sooner or later find expression on the plane of action. Thoughts literally are things. So the more we hang on to those thoughts. And then in talking about the right eye offend thee and the right hand offend thee, he says the soul's integrity is the one and only thing that matters. It matters not what the thing may be that is standing between us and our true contact with God, it must go. Right? So if our right hand offends thee, in other words, if we're doing something that we shouldn't be doing, or if our right eye offending, in other words, if we are seeing things that we're putting in between ourselves and God, right? If our heart, if what we are seeing, the appearances that we are believing in, that we are giving reality to, are less than holy, perfect love and peace, then we must cut it out. Right? It's better that we cut that out than the rest of us go to hell. So stop doing the stuff we shouldn't be doing and start doing the stuff we should. And Eric Butterworth, talking about this, says he's pointing out that the one true need in our lives is to get right in consciousness with God. Anything that's standing between us and our spiritual unity with God must go. So he's basically saying the same thing. It's our perception that we must clean up. And then he gives another little comment about divorce. If you marry somebody who was put away, then you are committing adultery, making her an adulteress. Similar to the first, we don't have enough time to go into great detail on everything. And then he says again, as you've heard it said of the men of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform the Lord what you have sworn. I say, do not swear at all, either by heaven or by the throne of God, or by earth or for its footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. Of course, evil is living backwards, right? It lives to live backwards. Evil, E-V-I-L, live, L-I-V-E, right?
Right.
So it's from living from the outside in instead of from the inside out. So yes or no. We get caught up. If we look out on the outside, we don't know the answer when we look outside of ourselves, right? We get into maybe. We get into all these weasel words. Well, it might be.
Yeah.
It appears as if. But when we get inside, when we get right with God, then we know yes or no. Either we're going, this is what's right for us, or this is not what's right for us. Let what you say be yes or no. More than this comes from living backwards. Right? It comes from the evil one. From what's outside of us. So we also have been looking at other faith traditions, the Hindu and the Buddhist. And it's amazing how sometimes it seems to be a direct link, and in this one it really definitely does. Right, from the 8 limbs of Raja Yoga or Yoga Dharana, which is concentration, is the 6th limb. And our quote from Patanjali, I've heard it both ways. Concentration is holding the mind within a center of spiritual consciousness in the body, or fixing it on some divine form either within the body or outside. I mean, that's just what we've been talking about being a pure in heart, right, is to see God, is to be able to see God. And then the Eightfold Path, Buddha's Eightfold Path, right effort is the 6th what do they call them? The sixth factor, sixth factor. Right effort is another path factor. Effort energy is a mental factor which can arise, and she uses the Sanskrit words. I'll just use an English translation. Energy is mental factor which can arise with wholesome consciousness, unwholesome consciousness, and consciousness which is neither wholesome or not wholesome. Its function is to support and strengthen the consciousness. And it goes down here. It is, path, let's see now. Energy, so this is energy or effort. Right effort. Is right effort of the Eightfold Path when it accomplishes right understanding of the Eightfold Path. It is the condition for perseverance with the investigation and study of the reality appearing at the present moment, be it mental phenomena or physical phenomena. Energy and patience are indispensable for the development of right understanding. So it goes right along here. That's the little bit that I put on the form. It is a condition for perseverance with the investigation and study of the reality appearing at the present moment. At the present moment. It goes right along with what Butterworth and Fox are saying. Purity is recognizing God alone as the only real cause and the only real power in existence. The capacity to apprehend the true nature of being. It's just the same as what it says down here, the reality appearing at the present moment. And then we have, in conclusion, I'll go with Neil Douglas Klotz's reinterpretation. In his book, he looks at the Aramaic words and comes up with some varieties of interpretations, and one of which is, aligned with the One are those whose lives radiate from a core of love. They shall see God everywhere. So the pure in the heart is the lives are radiating from a core of love. So that which the essence of us is love. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God. That's John 4:16, first letter of John 4:16. And so this beatitude is being faith-filled. Faith is a consciousness of God alone. So that's the title of our lesson today, being faith-filled, knowing that faith is a consciousness of God alone. We sometimes talk about blind faith and understanding faith. Blind faith is often
That's not really a true faith, is it?
Right, it's not a true faith. It's taking somebody else's opinion and applying it. Whereas understanding faith is a scientific faith. We put it to the test and see that it works. And that's why we call ourselves scientific Christianity. Or at least some of us still do. We practice it. We try it out. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then we take a look at, okay, what is it about what we were doing that didn't work? Right? And one thing I know is when I can truly put it in God's hands, God takes care of it. It doesn't always turn out the way I want it to be. Right? Doesn't always look the way that I think it should, but it's always for the highest and best good. So faith, a consciousness of God alone. It's an understanding faith. And